What's up, everybody? It's BDO 44 coming at you with another video. Okay, so I have a list of restricted and unrestricted free agents. I just kind of want to throw these names out there, and you can try to, plaster them together and see what works for your team. Maybe we can have a little conversation about what works for my team here too. Let's see. So, restricted names are as followed. This is not everybody, but this is most of them. Jared Allen, Bruce Brown, Davis from Toronto, Hamidou Diallo, Josh Hart, Jared Vanderbilt, Gary Trent Jr., THT, Duncan Robinson, Kendrick Nunn, Javonte Green, Lonzo Ball. So those are guys who, if they go get contracts from other teams, the team that they're previously on has the option to match that deal and bring them back. So some of these guys are going to get matched for sure. Others I don't expect to get matched. Zoe is up in the air right now. We don't know what's going on with that because I'm hearing two conflicting stories. One sending him to Chicago, the other one sending him to Charlotte. So he's going to be out of New Orleans, but I'm not sure where he's going. Javonte Green is a guy who will probably he's with Denver. I have no idea what they're going to do there. But Gary Trent Jr. is a guy I'd expect the Toronto Raptors to bring back. I'm surprised that he's a restricted free agent. I didn't know that, but I see no reason not to bring him back unless he's just priced himself too far out of their reach. But I think he's a part of their plans. I expect them to bring him back. So we'll see. The Vanderbilt guy is pretty interesting. I don't know what Minnesota has planned, but he had somewhat of a breakout last year. A change of scenery and a bigger role could be very, very good for him. Never know. I look at a guy like Christian Wood, who was given a big opportunity. He showed what he could do. And maybe Vanderbilt's the same type of way. So I don't know what's going on there, but I think him leaving Minnesota would probably be good for him. I think that. Josh Hart, see, you don't know, like, he's a non-shooter. It seems like New Orleans is trying to move on. I would not be at all surprised to see them do that. Let him walk. Hamidou Diallo is a guy who's really, really good. He's going to need an opportunity. I'd try to keep him if I'm Detroit. He's just a really good piece that they haven't really got a chance to see. But I know exactly what he can do because I had him on my fantasy team, as I always do with most of these players, right near the end of his tenure with OKC, and he started breaking out right before they traded him. So that's a high-level athlete, big-time role player at this stage, and he has some upside, some real good upside. So I would take a chance on him as if I were any team, really, if I had the money to throw at a player like him. And I would expect that Detroit will consider long and hard about keeping him as a part of what they're doing. Davis from Sac, that's another guy who can do a lot if you give him a lot of minutes. He's just stuck in Sacramento like everybody else in Sacramento. They just have a log jam of guards. And limited roles for the guys that are really, really, really high upside players. So, he's just kind of lost in the fold. But I know for a fact he's another one of those guys that had a breakout season, who's done some good things. So, you get him in the right situation, he's going to be helpful. I think Sacramento did trade him to Toronto. That's how that went, because he broke out in Toronto and then they traded him. I mean, they broke out in Sac and they traded him to Toronto. I think that's how that worked. But I remember him when he was with Sac. He was good. So you got Bruce Brown, another breakout player. You could tell a lot of these guys, they were in a space in mind where they were trying to make sure that they played well on their contract year. A lot of these guys broke out. These restricted free agents, you're seeing some names where they didn't really play like that before, but you saw them really push it. So that's what I'm seeing here with a lot of these names. Jared Allen, I think they're going to match, but drafting. Mobley did give them some insurance. If they don't want to match Jared Allen, I can totally see where the Twin Tower effect may not be where Cleveland want to go, but I think they should keep those two guys together. I think it makes them special. I think it makes them a unicorn type of team. And when you have that type of shot blocking in your starting lineup, you're going to be very difficult to play against. Very difficult. So I would say keep Jared Allen, keep of course, pair him up with Mobley and go about it that way. So depending on what his price tag is, I'm pretty sure his price tag is going to be pretty high because what he does is needed around the league. But we'll see, man. I'm pretty optimistic that Cleveland will keep him. So that concludes the restricted guys. Now there are the unrestricted guys that can just outright sign with any team that can pay them. Um, Avery Bradley. So I hear he's one of those guys rumored to go to the Lakers. Iggy, Andre Iguodala is another name that's out there. Justice Winslow, um, a young player who hasn't really had a chance to show what he can do. He's been hurt a lot since he was drafted, but he was drafted very, very high many years ago. I remember like 7 years ago. Um, Not much of a shooter, but definitely somebody who, when he's in shape, can play a multitude of positions, be very aggressive, do a lot for you. So I still think there's a role for him somewhere in this league. He's gonna find it. And RC Diacono, I believe is his name. I don't know how to pronounce that, unfortunately, but he plays for the Bulls. Combination shooting guard, point guard. So he's now free to find a new team. And those guys, those particular names were restricted free agents who their teams declined them. So they're just going to go ahead and let them walk. Um, all right, and the rest of these names are just flat out free agents. You got Will Barton, Spencer Dinwiddie, Tim Hardaway Jr., Brent Forbes, JaMychal Green, uh, Frank Ntilikina, Brandon Goodwin, Brad Wanamaker, Dennis Smith Jr., Zach Collins. There's so many different names, you know. Devontae Kaycock is a young player that I think my team should take a look at. He's somebody we've had on our farm team for a while. We've seen what he can do. I think he's one of those guys that can really help us now. DJ Wilson, another young player in that ilk. Haven't had a chance to show what he can do really. Was drafted, I think like a mid first round guy. I think drafted to the Milwaukee Bucks. He's supposed to be like a stretch four with some bounce. He got to Houston. I didn't pay attention to what happened there, but I look at him like a lottery pick, not a lottery pick, but like a draft pick, like a first round draft pick. That's how I view DJ Wilson. He hasn't really had a chance to show what he can do. His skill set spoke to being able to help a lot of teams, and he's a guy you should take a flyer on. You know, if you have a role, backup power forward role, got a couple $1,000,000 to throw at somebody, there's a player with some upside, and a price tag probably ain't gonna be crazy. Malik Monk, we've talked about him. Uh, Tony Bradley is a guy that's out there. He's a center who can do some things. Anytime he gets big minutes, we've heard this before many times out of me. Anytime a player like this gets big minutes, they show you that they can play starters minutes. They can do starters production type stuff. Tony Bradley's one of those guys. Got drafted by the Lakers, sent to Utah draft night. Didn't really get a chance to show what he could do. Went to Philly and got a chance when Joel Embiid went down to play some backup center and played very well in that role. So I know who Tony Bradley is. I know what he can do. Still a young player. Look at him as a draft pick. Some of these guys, they only been in the league for 3 years. Their team's giving up on them. Too early. I don't know what they're going to be. Maybe they turn into nothing. But sometimes dudes like that, you look up 5-6 years and they turn into freaking Hall of Famers. So that's why I'm so high on bringing up young players that I know have upside to situations where there's vets already. I don't need a bunch of vets on the Lakers. I want these guys. These are the type of players that I know they can do something. Brandon Goodwin had a breakout in Atlanta. Stuck behind the Atlanta bench. He was never going to get a chance to show what he could really do unless given an opportunity when people going down in injury. That happened. He broke out, showed that he could be a productive player on somebody's bench. That's a player to take a look at too. Dennis Smith Jr. People forgot about Dennis Smith Jr. They think he has no upside now, but when he was given an opportunity in Detroit, he showed that he can be productive. I know he has some holes in his game. I know he has some issues with turning the ball over, stuff like that, but this is somebody who was still a lottery pick talent only like 5 years ago. It ain't been that long. Giving up on people, labeling them too soon, putting them in bad situations and thinking you know who they are because they've been in those situations. No. You got some players that you can mold into all-stars if you just get them around the right coaches, you put them in the right situations, get them in the right training regimen. You're going to see some of these dudes explode. A guy like Dennis Smith Jr. has something you can't teach. Crazy freaking hops. So he gets in the right situation, he can set up your offense, and he can dunk on anybody. So you just need to stay healthy and continue to learn the game and not lose sight of who he was drafted to be, even though he's gotten lost in this league. That's what I say to Dennis Smith Jr. I know you are. You were drafted, what, third? It's only been 5 years. It ain't been that long. You're still in your 20s. Work on your game. Zach Collins, That's another guy up here that's a lottery pick. Same thing. Hasn't had a chance to show what he can do. Finally, a free agent. Maybe he can find himself in a situation that can benefit him. Bobby Portis, we've talked about that. That shocked me. I do think he's going to go back to Milwaukee ultimately, though. Norman Powell possibly to Detroit. We've heard about that. CP3. So we've talked about CP3. He's a free agent, but I think the deal is for him to restructure so that they can fit not Norman Powell, Cameron Payne in. I think that's what they're trying to do there. They're trying to work the numbers out so that Chris Paul can be on contract and Cameron Payne can both be signed. They don't want to lose any of those guys. So I think that's what they're doing. Because I made a video, I'm like, what the heck is CP3 doing? He has to be giving money back. He's making $44 million. You don't opt out of that. I don't think a player who's younger opts out of a $44 million contract. So an older guy ain't gonna do that unless he's doing what he should be doing, which is helping the team. And that's exactly what CP3 is doing. He's gonna give back money to assure that they can keep his backup point guard on the Suns, and I think that is that should be done. That simply should be done. So, what other names we have here? Spencer Dinwiddie, pay attention to him. He's trying to figure out where he wants to play. I know the Lakers have been on his mind for a long time. I don't know that we have the role for him or the money for him, but that's somebody who could be very productive. Coming off injury, but when he's healthy and when he's right, he's close to an all-star. He's simply close to an all-star. I don't put it like this. Healthy him, healthy Dennis Schroeder, same thing to me. They're pretty much on the same level, in my opinion. You're going to get the same type of production from Spencer that you would get from a healthy Dennis. So, let's see. Tim Hardaway Jr. That one shocked the heck out of me. I didn't know he was up for free agency. He is a big piece. The thing about Tim Hardaway Jr., this is the problem with Tim Hardaway Jr. Nothing wrong with him. His contract is always massive because he's just in a sweet spot where he's a pure shooter who's highly productive. He's got the name, and he's got a reputation, sort of like KCP, of a guy that you just pay. even if the production doesn't deem you need to pay them because of their body type, because of their skill set, because of the fact that they shoot just like weapons, they're absolute shooting weapons. You kind of just overpay for them each and every time. Those are two players that I think are also on the same level, KCP and Tim Hardaway Jr., because they've both made so much money but have not made all-star teams, but can contribute to winning, and you can totally justify why you've paid them that. We were happy to have KCP. Nobody even really remembers that he was overpaid each and every year. Each and every year. Because he always held up his end of the bargain, whether we were winning or we were a bad team. He was never a problem. And I look at Tim Hardaway Jr. the same way. But he's not changing life for Dallas. They were not so much better for the 30 points that he'd get from behind the arc. And that's the point. Why you can't continue to give a guy like that so much of a portion of your cap when he's not affecting wins with what he does. But if you can put him in the right situation at an affordable price so that other players around him can do the things that he doesn't do, and you put him into a system that works, he can help you win a championship. You put him on my Laker team right now, we're out of here. But we'll never be able to afford Tim Hardaway Jr. because of his price tag that continues to be given to him each and every time he's up for extension. So I expect nothing different. He's going to go somewhere like Orlando or somewhere, and he's going to make $1 trillion because he's a shooter and because people pay him. So that's what it is. As for myself, I would love to see him go to a team that kind of fits him. Dallas, staying in Dallas makes sense to me too. They shouldn't pay him continue to pay him that price, but the fact that they had him on the team as a weapon, especially in a year where they had lost a lot of shooting, made sense. Letting Curry go was a mistake, so keeping Tim Hardaway may not be. So I can totally see him staying there. Let's see some of these other names, y'all. Kawhi Leonard, he's going to be restructuring. He's staying with the Clippers. I don't see him going anywhere. Brad Wanamaker is a young guy, kind of in them roles, stuck behind people. He's on a bad Golden State team, so nobody's paying attention to him there. He was stuck behind that Boston bench with a million point guards during that whole era with Kyrie Irving and so on and so forth. I don't think he was there for Kemba Walker. He was there for Kyrie Irving. So he was like the guy behind the guy behind the guy. So this is somebody who's a slasher, shooter, shooter, 3-point shooter, kind of I think he's about 6'1", something like that. But he's an aggressive guy. You know, he's an aggressive scorer. He will go at it. You give him minutes, and he'll go and give you what he's got. So he's limited in some ways, but I think he's going to help a team, and he's not going to cost a whole lot. So that's a guy like that I can think will find a suitor sooner than later. And so on and so forth. Isaac Bonga, so young, so big. Here's the thing about Isaac Bonga. See, I know who he is as a player. We drafted him in the back of the bench. He was a part of that deal that we traded to Washington several years. What was that? 2 years ago when we made that big trade to Washington and sent a bunch of kids there and got back. I don't even remember what we got back, but he was a part of that deal. But he was like a six, if I'm not mistaken, he's like 6'5", 6'6", 6'7". He might be even taller than that. Point guard, who was very, very aggressive. And when we put him out there, he was productive. He didn't make too many mistakes at all. And mind you, this was the youngest player on a team full of the young players that we had. He was the baby of all the babies. You know, he was even younger than Svi. So when I look at Isaac Bonga, I look at him like I said, these other guys. He's a draft pick, and he's played his way into a better role than he was drafted to be in terms of my opinion. I think he's a backup point guard right now, maybe your third string, but his upside and his youth is so intriguing. This kid, he's been in the league for 3 years. I don't even know if he's 21 yet. And the fact that he's so tall and capable, and he's aggressive, he hits his free throws. He doesn't really have too many holes in his game. He just needs to be given opportunities. So I like Isaac Bonga. I'd love to bring him back because I believe that he's going to turn into a real solid player in this league. I don't know what his upside is, superstar, I don't know about all that. But what I'm saying to you is when you're looking for players that can help you in multiple positions, who can handle the ball, create for others, and keep your ball movement going and all of that stuff and be disruptive because of length and things like that, Isaac Bonga is perfect for that. And he's not going to cost a lot because he hasn't done it yet in the league. Corey Joseph, complete opposite. That's a guy who's almost out of the league, to be completely honest with you, but still can help a team, I believe. He's in shape. He's already won a championship with Toronto. He's been in a lot of good situations. He's played in some good roles. He knows who he is. And I think he's a type of guy who can end up on the Lakers for like a vet minimum. He's totally a guy I can see us getting. He kind of finds himself in these type of situations sometimes. So that's good. Will Barton. One of my favorite players in the league, Will Barton, but I can never remember his name. It's the funniest thing in the world. Anytime you see me talking about Denver, I never, ever remember his name. It's a running joke at this point. I've talked about Denver probably 8-9 times since I made this channel. May have gotten his name right once, maybe once. But Will Barton is one of those guys who you don't forget who he is. For whatever reason, his name don't come to mind, but you know exactly what he brings to the table. He's very comfortable coming off the bench if you need him to. Swing man, he can do a lot of things. Reminds me of a Trevor Ariza type of guy in his prime, to where he can get in passing lanes, be disruptive defensively, go back down the other end, hit his threes, be wiry in terms of slashing to the basket and dunking on your head. He's a guy who, if he has issues staying healthy. That's the problem with Will Barton. He's an injury-prone player, but when he's right, he's super productive, and he works within systems that work with him. In whatever way. If you need him to start, he can start. If you need him to sit, he can sit. He's one of those guys who can do a lot of different things for you from the small forward, shooting guard position. I think he might be priced a little out of the game for us, but if we get him, he would be one of the biggest steals in free agency. And I don't think the Lakers are looking at him. Probably priced out the game, but I can totally see him going back to Denver. There's no reason for him not to. He has a home there. I don't think he's ever played for any other team. They're a winning caliber basketball team. I think they're getting back their full spectrum of players. Got a full year in training camp with Gordon, Aaron Gordon. That's a big deal. So I think Denver's an improving team. You know, obviously Murray's coming back. So I don't think he leaves. I think they re-sign him. But if he does sign somewhere, he's definitely going to have a pretty solid role, because this is somebody who I think has been long coveted in the league. He just continued to stay with Denver, but I think everybody wants him pretty much. A name that I know I didn't write down but should be on this list is what's my guy's name? Oubre, Kelly Oubre Jr. I don't know to what extent is he restricted, non-restricted, but I hear he's linked to the Spurs, so keep an eye open for that. Let's see, there's some more names on here we can talk about. Brent Forbes coming fresh off a championship with Milwaukee. I think that always increases a guy's value. Anytime you're fresh off a championship or have a championship in their resume, that you can tack on a couple $1 million just for that alone in most cases. And I think that will be the case in Brent Forbes. He's done some good things. Unlike some players, he's been in some very good situations, very good organizations, albeit not situations necessarily. But when you grow up in the Spurs, that's a good place to be. Even if they're losing, you're going to pick up the right habits with that type of coaching. And then you're going to, swap that and go to the Milwaukee and end up winning a championship. So he's been fortunate enough to have a really good path despite kind of being a bench player, role player. And I think that that's going to hold some great value in this free agency. I'd imagine he's going to find a nice solid, nice payday for himself. Let's see, Isaiah Hartenstein, I believe is his name. That's a player from the Cleveland Cavaliers who I know is a big-time breakout candidate for this year. Yes, he's one of those guys that you don't know who he is, but statistically, if you own him in fantasy and he's getting starters minutes, he's a must-own in fantasy. That's what I'm here to tell you. And nobody knows who he is because he only had a breakout for about 5 minutes while the Cleveland Cavaliers were kind of depleted in their power forward position. Just about everybody went down at the same time, and they gave him an opportunity, and he showed you that his length was very helpful for that team, and his aggressiveness is very helpful for that Cleveland Cavalier team. Him now being an unrestricted free agent, I don't know what he would demand based on his breakout, but as a scout, as somebody who's paying attention, I'm definitely taking a flyer on that kid. If I have to roll for him, I'm not even hesitating. He's one of the first people I'm picking up on free agency because I look for players like that. He's a deep sleeper. That's what he is, a deep sleeper. Someone that nobody really knows who he is except for me. That's how I feel about Isaiah Hartenstein. So yeah, he needs to be picked up and he needs to be given a role. Devontae Cacok, I feel the same way, not to the same extent because he hasn't had a chance to show it, but I've seen him with the Lakers and I know he's a power forward, and I want to see him play with the Lakers. I want him to stay with us. I believe in him. It's sort of like I saw with what's my man's name, Alex Caruso, and watching him in the G League and seeing him come about slowly but surely gain his respect in this roster. I think the same thing for a guy like Devontae Cacok. He's taking the same path. He's going about it the right way. He's developing with us, and I want to see him get that opportunity, especially since we need what he does. So I hope the Lakers sign him and call him up to the main squad. Let's see. Some other names here, man. Some other names I did good here. I ain't gonna lie. Yep, that's what we're doing. JaMychal Green, I think I already mentioned him. I think I might have got them all out, though. Oh, Frank Ntilikina. That's another player. So Frank Ntilikina, the thing about Frank Ntilikina is he went to the Knicks, and the Knicks didn't really need a point guard. They should have taken someone else. We know that there were other players on the board. I think it was a big name that they passed up, taking Frank Ntilikina. And it's just one of those New York Knicks mistakes. You know what I mean? They already had guys. And what he brought to the table was international experience. He was somebody who was, while he was being drafted, was scheduled the very next day to go play a championship game in his country. So, this is someone who, even though he ended up not really panning out, somebody with a lot of experience overseas, somebody who knows who he is as a basketball player, albeit a young basketball player. He knows who he is. He's a defensive player, and he doesn't shoot he's not a shooter. He's not a facilitating point guard, but what he can do is do some things offensively is good enough to keep him on the floor and focus more so on the defensive end. So I'm optimistic that he can come into his own, dude. You don't find yourself in the lottery and just suck and have no upside, especially since you ain't had no injuries. It's only been 3 years. So did they reach that day in drafting him? I think a lot of analysts and people who were watching thought that they were reaching that night for him. We didn't think he was as good as he was being touted to be by the Knicks who took him. But the upside that he had hasn't gone anywhere. As I always say about these young players, they ain't gone nowhere. Unless you see some injuries or something, they're still the same guy. They just need to be in a situation where a team can believe in them and give them an opportunity to just simply make mistakes organically and learn from them. A guy like Frank Ntilikina doesn't have a rope like that in New York, nor does he have a role like that in New York. So as far as I'm concerned, yet another lottery pick. Not a lottery, but maybe so, depending on what you think of him, but yet another draft pick in my mind. He's just a draft pick 2 or 3 years in, but hasn't developed yet. Who knows who this kid is? take a flyer on him. Maybe if you believe in him, take a look at him. You know, I can't really tell you that I'm a huge believer in what he brings to the table, but what I can say is, whatever the Knicks saw in him probably ain't going nowhere. It's just they didn't do anything with it, and we've seen that a million times. We see that all the time. So yeah, that's what I got. I think I hit you with all the names that I'm seeing here, everything that I can make out anyway. So yeah, thank you guys for watching. Tell me what you think of those names. You know, those are the free agents out there. Obviously, things could change. Some of those names may have already signed. I don't know. I didn't do a lot of homework on some of that stuff. May have agreements that we haven't talked about. But I'll keep my eyes open. As I get stuff, I'll bring it to you. Thank you all for watching. My name is BDL44. I'm out.